Good morning, Kingsley community. Pastor Colleen Weirman here, coming to you with another daily devotion for Thursday, March 25th, 2021. And again, using the Ignatian Workout for Lent by Tim Muldoon. We are in the I Hurt Because I Love theme, and we are on exercise 26, and this is the trial of Jesus. And this is in front of Pilate. Mark 15, 1 through 15. As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they have brought against you?" But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them, any one for whom they asked. This is now he is Pilate. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Then he answered, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke up again, "Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, handed him over to be crucified. Tim writes, the scene of Jesus' trial is in stark contrast to the earlier scene of his agony in the garden. Here Jesus appears resigned, even indifferent. There is none of the terror he showed earlier. We see no reference to the Father, whose apparent absence from the scene is striking. Why does it seem to us that in our times of great need, God can be deafeningly silent? In his meditation on suffering, St. John of the Cross describes the necessity of the dark night of the soul, the feeling of God's absence. He writes, "It is fitting that, if the understanding is to be united with that light and become divine in the state of perfection, it should first of all be purged and annihilated as to its natural light, and, by means of dark contemplation, be brought actually into darkness. This darkness should continue for as long as is needed in order to expel and annihilate the habit which the soul has long since formed in its manner of understanding, and the divine light and illumination will then take its place." So, St. John of the Cross describes the dark night of the soul, that God seems to be absent, even though we know scripturally he's not, but that's to get the darkness out and to bring in God's light to replace it, which means suffering. Darkness, valley times, all means suffering of the human in a broken world. What Jesus shows in his experience of trial is readiness to do what he knows the Father has asked him, even to go to a painful death. This is Jesus' own act of faith, to trust the Father up to his death, even when the Father seems absent. So, to put that in our terms, when we go through sufferings and trials, we have to believe that God is near, God hears, God knows what's going on, and God is still active in and through the trials, getting you through them. You might not get to go around them or be completely healed of them right off the bat, but God will be with you as you go through them. What does a meditative reading of the story of the trial stir up in you? So what does this in front of Pilate stir up in you? It speaks to me about Pilate giving in to fear of the tyranny of a crowd, because remember, Pilate was supposed to keep the crowds under control. Because we know if he didn't, then the chief priests would go and blame him and take that above his head to Caesar. And then Caesar would remove Pilate. Who knows what Caesar would do? Kill Pilate. Couldn't keep his people under control. The other part that stirs in me is that Jesus, when it says, "Are you the king of the Jews?" and Jesus answered Pilate, "You say so." So meaning Pilate speaks truth. He speaks truth and people don't see it. People don't hear it. He speaks nothing after that. He did not speak once in front of Herod. Didn't open his mouth. Herod definitely was not worthy to speak for the king of the world to even acknowledge. What trials have you faced or are you facing? Tim writes, can you find a place in your heart where you are willing to trust God the way Jesus did? Action. In the coming days, set aside time to undertake the stations of the cross. Give yourself time to consider how meditating on Christ's way of the cross sheds light on the specific struggles you are facing. So we've done stations of the crosses at one of my other churches. I haven't done it here at Kingsley. A lot of Catholic churches will have the stations of the cross set up in their sanctuaries or their worship spaces. And you basically go in, and I think they're set up all the time. And you can go in and meditate. You know, there's usually a prayer, there's usually a symbol, and this is basically Jesus's walk from the triumphal entry all the way to the crucifixion, and it kind of gives you time to stop at each location, physical location within this church, to experience the stations of the cross. So the stations are biblically based scripture on Jesus's walk from the triumphal entry at Palm Sunday, which is this Sunday, all the way through Holy Week. And to the cross. So you get, usually there might be palms at the beginning and the scripture on Jesus's entry into Jerusalem. Then the next one might be the trial of Caiaphas at Caiaphas's house, and which some of us clergy from the state of Michigan are going to do a video that we're going to show on Good Friday for the Jesus problem. This is where Jesus is in front of Caiaphas, the high priest, and how Caiaphas is going to figure out what to do about this Jesus problem. And so we're going to tape that tonight. It's going to look like a Zoom call, and then we'll be able to play that for Good Friday. So then you might have then the part where Jesus is flogged, and there might be some symbolic things there for that. You might get to write a prayer as to what you're feeling when you hear what Jesus went through, the flogging and the scourging. Flogging's bad enough, but scourging is when, they would take a whip, and at the end of the whip would be either sharp bone or probably sharp bone. And what it would do is they would tie them up to a log or a post or something in public view. All of this was done in public to let people know that the Romans are still in charge. And then they would scourge him, which they'd take the whip and they hit his back a number of times, and that bone would just grab onto the flesh and rip open the back of the flesh on his back. And so, if that didn't kill you, you were pretty close to being dead. And then you had to carry your cross. So the stations of the cross are all these different scriptures set up in a church somewhere. And you could probably Google some churches that have the stations of the crosses set up. Some United Methodist churches have those. Some Catholic churches do. And usually they'll let you in. I don't know with Corona what that means, but or with the COVID virus, but usually you can go in at any time that suits you and just pray and meditate on each step of the way to the cross. Those are called the stations of the cross. And from Palm Sunday all the way through Holy Week, all the way through the crucifixion. So maybe you could find that somewhere and do that. So give yourself time when you're doing this to meditate on Christ's way of the cross and how it sheds light on the specific struggles that you are facing. So know that Jesus has gone through much, probably more than we will ever go through. But he knows what it's like to feel abandoned. He knows what it's like to feel pain. He knows what it's like to feel beaten up or bullied. He knows what that feels like. So take your burdens and your hurts to him and ask him. Remember, God is active. He's presently active through the Spirit. So it's not like you're just taking your prayers to Jesus, and he's like, well, I hope you get through that. Good luck. No, he's actively present. We know from Scripture that if you're brokenhearted over something, or you're in a trial or a tribulation, take that to God, pray to God about it, and watch him actively rescue you from that. It might take a while. Like I said, he didn't rescue Jesus on the cross. He rescued him from the grave. So it might take a while. You might be going through that persecution or that suffering or whatever it is for a little bit. But pray to God and then ask Him to give you discernment on how to handle it. I was in a situation where I asked God to help me discern what to do in a case of something needed to be done for something we've never done it this way before, or we've always done it this way before and we needed to change. COVID makes us change quickly. And so I just prayed before I went into the meeting, and I brought it up, and I didn't have to speak after that. The other people in the committee all took it to where God wanted it to go. And I'm like, it's so much easier when you let God do stuff. Isn't that amazing? When you let God do it. But when you try to do it on your own, it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. But when you ask God to help, and then you do move forward, because you do have to show some action, know that God is actively with you. He's next to you. He's beside you. Sometimes He's got your six, as the military says. He's got your back for those people that like to stab you in the back, those people. And pray, and then ask God how to handle it. And a lot of times it might be going forward in some kind of a meeting or a discussion with the person that you don't really want to have. And then God will speak either through you or through another person in the room. It's amazing how that works. So, I think, and if God, God always has our best interest at heart and those we love. So pray for them and continue to know that God has experienced it. He's experienced everything we've experienced. Loss of a loved one, people accusing him of things he never did, blasphemy. They accused him of blasphemy, of being God. He was God. He is God. Eating with sinners, healing on the Sabbath, breaking the laws of the Mosaic laws, and all these things. So if you feel persecuted, and then here's these giant Roman soldiers that tie Jesus up and just bully him and beat him and make fun of him, and stick a crown of thorns on his head, and then in front of him cast lots for his clothing, and then put a robe on him and ridicule him. All the while they were beating the King of glory. Yeah. So know that He's been through it. He walks with us. He's actively present. He's not just hanging out, watching, going, wow, that's got to be rough. He's actually been through it, and He knows what it feels like. And so when you go to Jesus and meditate on His walk of suffering through Holy Week, then you know that He's experienced every human emotion that there is. So take your needs to Him. And hopefully you'll get to a place that has the Stations of the Cross. If not, you can do it your own. You can do it for yourself. You can set it up in your home. You can also just read the Stations of the Crosses online and get those too. But if you want to experience it, find a church that has those stations set up. And hopefully they'll be open for you to come in and meditate and pray on each station of Jesus's walk from Palm Sunday through the crucifixion. That's the Stations of the Cross. So I will be in person this Sunday at 9 a.m. at Kingsley Methodist Church, 113 Blair Street, Palm Sunday. And we're going to be continuing on sermon series, How Sweet the Sound, where we're looking at hymns, the stories behind them, and the theological basis behind them, the biblical truths behind them. So we know that whenever we sing hymns or we sing praise songs, we're singing the Bible. And so this week it is Well With My Soul. And we'll talk a little bit about how that was written. Tragedy, very tragic. Most of these hymns are written because of sufferings and pains and trials that people have gone through. But the writer writes in the lyrics that he knows that God is with him and that He's presently active with him. And so we'll talk about that, and that will correlate with Psalm 34. God is near to the brokenhearted and rescues those who are crushed in spirit. And we'll also read Psalm 22, Jesus's very famous quote from Psalm 22 from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? So we'll look at that this Sunday, Palm Sunday, and 9 a.m. or right here in person at the church, or right here live on Facebook. Till then, you have a good weekend. Bye-bye.